Okay, so our sequence is given by x equals to 1, and when x sub 0, sub n plus 1 equals x sub n brackets p plus x sub n, where p is a constant and p is not equal to 0. First of all, find x2 in terms of p. So to find x2, we go to here, and this is x, and for this to become a 2, it means that n has to be a 1. So x1 add 1 equals x sub 1 p plus x sub 1. Therefore x2 is equal to x1 brackets p plus x1. But we know that we're given x1 is equal to 1 from this relationship. That means x2 is equal to 1 bracket p plus 1. So x2 is equal to p plus 1. Okay, that's that one done. Just underline it. Okay, so x2 is equal to p plus 1. And part B asks, show that x3 equals 1 plus 3p plus 2p squared. So going back again to this equation, x3 requires that n be 2. So if n is 2, then we have x3, and that x3 when n is 2 means x2 bracket p plus x2. But we've already calculated x2, and x2 is that equation there. So x3 is going to be equal to x2, which is p plus 1, times p plus x2, which is p plus 1 again. So this gives us p plus 1 bracket 2p plus 1 close bracket, which means we multiply these two. Let me do it up here where there is more space. Let's do that. So that becomes p plus 1, 2p plus 1. Change that color. So I'm going to multiply p times 2p, then okay, something's gone silly there. Let's try that again. I'm going to multiply p times 2p, then p times 1, then 1 times 2p, then 1 times 1. So that becomes 2p squared plus p plus 2p plus 1, and that becomes 2p squared plus 3p plus 1. Okay, so this here is the same as that. Okay, so x3 is equal to 1 plus 3p plus 2p squared. Okay, now given that x equals to 1, x3 equals 1, find the value of p. Alright, so all we do is we say that 1 plus 3p plus 2p squared equals 1. This 1 goes over to this side and becomes a minus 1. So eventually we have 2p squared plus 3p equals 0. Now you can factorize this in terms of p. We have 2p plus 3. In other words, this means that p is equal to 0 and 2p plus 3 is equal to 0, and this simplifies to 2p equals minus 3 and p equals minus 3 over 2. Okay, so those are the two values of p. Now write down the value of x sub. Okay, so 2008. We already worked this out. We know that x2 in terms of p is p plus 1. We've shown that x3 is 1 plus 3 plus 2p squared. We've got a value for x3 which is 1 and x1 is 1. Okay, so x1 is 1, x3 is 1, so we can find x2. x2 is p plus 1, so p, we're told, is different from 0, so p is different from 0, which means our only value of p is this one. Okay, so this value of p is out because of that. Now what we need to do is find a value for x2 when p is minus 3 over 2. So x2 is minus 3 over 2 plus 1, which is basically 2 over 2 minus 3 over 2, which is minus half. Okay, so that's x3. Now what would x4 be? x4 would be x3 plus 1, so it will be x3 p plus x3, and we know that x3 is 1, so that will be 1, that will be p plus 1. Okay, so if p is 3 over 2 minus 3 over 2, sorry, if x is minus 3 over 2, then minus 3/2 plus 1 over minus half. Okay, so we're getting a 1 for even numbers, no, for odd numbers of that number, and we're getting a minus half for even numbers, and that's an even number, so it's going to be minus half. Okay.